Okay, I'd like to finish this up. I meant to do it in 2 videos, finish it up really quickly in a 3rd video. I made a direct comparison between what passes through this prime lens, i.e. light or any lens, which is electrical and magnetic and dielectric along the z-axis. What is the z-axis? Well, the transverse aspects are electrical and magnetic. Okay, transverse meaning opposite, okay? Kind of like you have a wheel as a fulcrum point. Whatever is opposite the axle would obviously be the electrical and magnetic, which reciprocate around the axle. You can think the dielectric pulses, which make up the power of light, which are more, there is more towards the blue end of the spectrum than there is towards the red. I've directly equated what passes through this lens, this prime lens, or any lens, zoom lens or prime lens, to a magnet. Magnet is nothing other than the coherency of the field in the this is the neodymium iron boron, which has a hexagonal lattice, which allows for field coherency. Okay, remember, everything in the universe, 100% of it, everything in the universe is fields. Fields. They're particle free, and nobody has ever defined or explained a field. Explained a field. You can deny that all you want, but you're never. I'll give you $1 million if you can go find an explanation for a field. You will never find it. You'll find descriptions of fields. You'll find plenty of extrapolative connotations of the quantification of field influences, but you'll never find anywhere an explanation for what the term a field is. I said explanation. Doesn't exist. Humanity hasn't discovered it yet. Humanity is not that smart. You think with our digital cameras and everything else we're that smart? Not that smart. Not that smart. Okay, that's the biggest mistake any person will ever make in their life, is that, and every branch of science is always that, well, we're smart, we've discovered everything. 50 years later, it's like, oh God, those guys 50 years ago were so stupid, they didn't know jack crap. And that is the case now as it ever was in history. So getting back to prime lenses versus zoom lenses, I like to make this video a lot shorter. People think I flap my lips too much, although I've actually said a lot in the prior 2 videos, very succinctly, and hopefully not repetitively, that there's no difference between the field coherency in this magnet and what passes through this lens. So I ask you the question, or at least I ask you to ponder upon it. A buddy of mine named Tim Vanderelli created one of the most simplistic devices that humanity has ever seen. There's 2 pieces of sheet glass here. Underneath it I've got the magnet. Not sheet glass, excuse me, optically flat grade. You can't use sheet glass. Optically flat means super, super flat. Pieces of glass. Between that is less than 1 micron. I don't know if you know how thin a micron is. Micron, your hair is like the freaking Empire State Building in thickness compared to a micron. There's a smear of ferrofluid between these 2 optically flat lenses that is less than a micron thin. Yet if you were to look at this ferrocell, you'll see 4 inches of depth. Either one of these is the pole of the magnet, okay? Outside of this, blacked off with black tape, you can see some of the light poking through. It's nothing other than a strip of hardware LEDs, okay? I've got them taped and pointing inwards. The light is pointing inwards all around. If I were to use 1 LED, the image would be the same. It would just be limited. If I use 2 LEDs or 3 and unevenly space them, it doesn't matter, okay? Now the magnet has field coherency. Here we have the dielectric inertial plane. Here we have either pole, quote unquote. A magnet doesn't technically have poles. It has the inverse of counter space. The dielectric inertial plane is directly relevant to the z-axis of transverse electromagnetic radiation, which you commonly refer to as light. But light is strictly not electromagnetic in nature. Light has a z-axis component, of which its power constituent is comprised thereof. That is why towards the blue end of the spectrum there is more power. So ask me why I have a holographic, this is not a hologram by the way, this is a real world, I'm actually real world turning this. What happened is that the fields are actually diverging and converging the light due to electromagnetic retardation, the same way that light is diverged and converged as it's passing through various lenses. So why do I have 4 inches of depth, apparently so, through something that is less than 1 micron thin? And how is that directly relevant to a lens, especially since we're talking about prime lenses versus zoom lenses? Why is this 4-element prime lens or 5-element prime lens will blow the crap? And it's old too. This lens is old. Why will it create a renditional image that is far better depth and color saturation than a zoom lens. What is it that makes it up? And I say you couldn't talk about it in the first video, second, or the third, and this would take 100 videos. Talk about parallax, binocular disparity, diffraction, electromagnetic retardation, ED glass dielectric permittivity, and low magnetic permeability. Anytime you affect one thing, you affect the other, right? One of the key principles of the universe is whatever you screw with, you've affected something else about that thing, okay? You're going to have a lot warmer winter, but resultantly something else is going to happen, okay? Whatever you affect, you've affected the other side of it, okay? You can't mess with anything without messing with the other side of it. So what happens is, in the use of these ED elements, this is the secret sauce that Nikon and Canon ain't never going to tell you about what's inside as far as the exact composition. But I can tell you right now what it is titanium dioxide, which is a photocatalytic converter, which means it has a high dielectric permittivity. Or it has lanthanum dioxide, or zirconium dioxide, or calcium flow. Okay, which is it? It's a combination all thereof. Mostly it's titanium dioxide that makes up the ED glass, which causes high dielectric permittivity, which means that the red and blue end of the spectrum converge to the same focal point. These are used in zoom elements. Also, something else that is used, which is far, far cheaper, because production of ED elements ain't cheap. Production of achromatic doublets is very cheap. Achromatic doublet is a secondary flint element which causes the convergence of the red and blue the same way the ED glass does. This is very cheap. The ED elements are not. Okay? C is never a constant. Okay? C max, the speed of light, maximum speed of light, or what people refer to as the speed of light. Well, the speed of light's a constant. No, it isn't. Speed of C max is the maximum transverse speed of propagation in a quote-unquote vacuum. Ultimately, there's no true vacuum, not even in space, but the speed of light that we think is constant is not constant. This isn't my premise. This is an actual hardcore fact. If you shoot light through glass, that's why you get a prism on the wall and you shoot light through a prism. I mean, shoot light through a prism element. Light is not a constant. The higher the capacitance of light, kind of knocked the lens there. The higher capacitance of the light, the more the light is actually diffracted, and this causes binocular disparity. As all these zoom lenses have multiple, they'll have one or two ED elements in them. ED glass is very damn expensive. Okay, that's not going to change anytime soon. It's doped glass. Okay, as I told you, it's doped with titanium dioxide or lanthanum oxide. They have one or two ED elements, and they have achromatic doublets. All of these things, while they're good because they cause light convergence, they're bad. Because whatever you affect the one side of something, you always affect the other. It's like saying you're going to scratch one side of the coin up, but not affect the other. You got a rare coin here. Well, I'm only going to scratch up this, so who gives a damn? Now the coin isn't worth as much because that side has been scratched to hell. It's the same thing, okay? Why are prime lenses better than zoom lenses? There are a number of reasons. It's all scientific, but there's no lens designer that knows any of this stuff because none of them are into field theory. They learn about optics only. You think anybody that is got a PhD in optics learns anything about field theory? Hell no, they don't. They don't know anything about that. They know about diffraction, dispersion, disparity, parallax. They know about convergence and divergence in the building of elements, but they don't know anything about this. Now, some of the wise old turds, the old coots that work at Nikon and Canon, and some of these old coots, they know. It's like, I got a $2,000 lens here with 15 elements, but they know, and they're sitting there back there smiling with this old damn lens, and they're things like, yeah, this lens makes better images. Well, this lens has got 13 elements, and it's got 2 nanoparticle coated elements, and it's got 2 No, this lens makes better images. No, it can't be, because this lens is $2,000, and it's got a nanoparticle coated element, it's got 2 ED elements, and it's got 3 achromatic doublets in it, and it's a lot sharper than that lens. Yeah, no, this is a better lens. No, sorry about that. No. There are a few people that know that, and there are not many. And a lot of you people that have discovered that, they've been shooting a long time. Some professionals even. Like, I've had a couple primes, but I always use my 80-200 or my 70-200 or, some really good zooms. And I'm not against zooms. I mean, half of my lenses are basically zooms. But you kind of need to want to start steering towards having half of your lenses being prime lenses. And there really is, I hate to use the word, magical property of light, and it's only magical because people are stupid and they don't understand it. I mean, people, not people specifically, but people in general, they just don't know. I mean, you talk to someone about parallax or binocular disparity, or talk about holographic drift coherency. It's like, oh, where's the three-dimensionality of this coming from? Okay, this is two-dimensional. So where am I getting the three-dimensionality out of this? Well, I don't know if you know how holograms are created, but maybe you should watch a video on how they're created. Actually, you've got a reference beam. Okay, it's split up. You actually, one gets projected on the object, and the other one is the primary. It's primary, and you got the reference beam, creation of you can actually create holograms now. The difficult thing is actually using a super heavy table, because any sort of shake, just like tapping a table like this, would cause huge issues with the creation of holograms. But anyway, ED glass is doped. Glass is a dielectric capacitor, and whatever you change one thing, ED glass has high dielectric permittivity, which allows for the passage of blue light through, so it converges basically at the same point as the red light. That's good, but that also means that it has high dielectric permittivity, which is basically like saying I'm greasing the entire nature of this glass so that blue light slips through it quicker than regular glass, which has a disfocus point, a disparity of focal points between the red spectrum and the blue spectrum. So it removes red spectrum, blue spectrum disparity, so convergence goes from this to this. They converge. But the problem with that is it creates low magnetic permeability. And in doing so, you add all these ED elements and achromatic doublets, which alter the nature of light, which creates these crappy flat images. Okay? It's like printing out an image of this on a piece of paper. Okay? A shell, a nautilus shell like this. It's like, oh, well, that's nice, okay. This is a hologram. It's the same thing hitting the back of your sensor, or if you're shooting film, that's hitting your film. Okay? You have parallax and binocular disparity and diffraction issues, which are due to electromagnetic retardation and the butchering of the light. This is why there is not a single explanation out there of why prime lenses are superior to zoom lenses. All things being equal, we got awesome lens production, versus old crappy prime lenses, which, there are plenty of crappy prime lenses, but most of them are just old crappy lenses back before they got to making glass decent. We're talking really damn old though, pre-1970s, and made in Russia by some slave labor camp or God knows where. So there obviously are crappy prime lenses, crappy construction, but that's in the geometry of their construction, but not their potential of what they have. You're able to create better glass, better construction on as far as the refractive index, but the low element count, there's no escaping, and Zeiss has admitted this, but they'll not tell you the explanation for it. Zeiss, Nikon, and Canon will all admit to one thing that I've told you here that you won't read anywhere, is that glass ultimately murders the image. Doesn't matter if you got the perfect number of ED glass elements, perfect number of nanoparticle coated elements. Zeiss, Canon, and Nikon will all admit this, but none of them know jack crap about field theory. They know about parallax and binocular disparity and the rest of it. They're trying to produce the sharpest image on the back of the sensor with the least amount of chromatic aberration, so there is the least amount of chromatic disparity between red and blue end of the spectrum, but ultimately they fail because Nikon doesn't really produce many lenses like this. I mean, they don't produce these 4-element lenses. This is a 4-element lens. It's got a little bit of chromatic aberration, okay, but you can take that out in Photoshop or any one of the programs you use very, very easily. But people don't like that. Oh, it's got a little bit of chromatic aberration. Yeah, but the images this produce, the saturation and the depth, are incredible. All of you out there that own one of these in 3.5 or 2.8 know that. And people have been using zooms all this time. It's like, oh, I got a really expensive zoom lens. There's no way that old piece of crap made in the 1970s is better than my expensive zoom lens. Wrong! Wrong! You don't know what you're talking about. You don't. So this is kind of, and this was this was 3 videos, and this was still a nutshell. I still really haven't explained it. It took me 3 videos to cram it in a really tiny nutshell, and I still haven't given it the proper attention. But anyway, that's the reason why prime lenses are better than zoom lenses. Thanks for